Hello, Sooner Nation, and happy NBA Finals Day.
Let's go.
It is a momentous day here on June 5th in the prairies for OU Insider subscribers, for Oklahoma City Thunder fans, for OU softball fans, for Brian Clinton enthusiasts. It's a momentous day. It's a momentous day in Oklahoma City. And I could not be more thrilled to do this latest installment of the Oklahoma Drill, a podcast fueled by OU Insider. I am Jesse Crittenden, and I'm joined as always by Mr. Brian Clinton. And Brian, I'm going to be in the building for Game 1 of the NBA Finals tonight. I feel like a 12-year-old. Which I was 15 when the Thunder last made the finals. So I feel like a 15-year-old. That's how I feel, Brian.
Yeah. It's surreal. My fandom has grown tremendously just in the last, I'll say it. You can call me a bandwagon fan. I really didn't become a Thunder fan following them until Russ was the last remaining. And so I really wasn't all that big with the original big three, but now I can't wait, man. There's so much fun to follow. It's gotten my wife into watching NBA basketball. This team is just incredible. So much fun to watch.
Well, for one, no such thing as a bandwagon fan not on this Thunder team. That's one. Two, I think people were going to be in a bind if OU softball had made the Women's College World Series finals. You'd have to get some split screen action tonight. I imagine some people will still do that because it's Game 2 of the Champ Series tonight. Yeah. But without OU softball, I think there's going to be a lot of TVs in the state of Oklahoma watching this Thunder game. I'll be in the building. Did I mention that already? I'll be in the building. Ryan Chapman and I having season tickets has paid off. And we were in a bind because if OU made it past Texas Tech and made it to the Champ Series, we were going to miss Game 1 of the finals, which it just shows you our level of commitment to this job. We would have missed the NBA Finals.
That's right.
To go cover OU softball. But OU softball, taking me into account, decided to lose so that Chapman and I could go see the finals.
We've got some breaking news as well.
What's the breaking?
On the softball front.
Let's hear it.
Oklahoma outfielder Hannah Core and Katie McKay have officially entered the transfer portal.
Well, there you go. Looks like I'm going to be writing a story as soon as this pod is up. That gives us a nice segue, Brian. That was Justin from D1 Softball. He's a good guy and a good follow, reporting that. Let's talk before we get into the transfer portal, which we were going to get into. Let's just say this. I don't want us to completely gloss over this season before we talk about the offseason. A year that covering a team, I've never had a team I've covered to make me rewrite so many game stories in the middle of a game. And that happened in both the Tennessee game, the first game at the World Series, and then the Texas Tech game where Abby Dayton hits a miracle 2-run bomb off Nyjah Kennedy and looked like Sooner magic. That 10-minute sequence of I've got my story ready to publish that OU season's over to I've got to rewrite the whole thing to oh crap, they still ended up losing, but I can't use the story I had already written because so much has changed in the last 10 minutes. Brian, I think there's a lot of things we could say. We could talk about it for years. I think I'll just say that I think losing in the semifinals to Texas Tech felt maybe like the right outcome.
Yeah.
For this team. I think they about hit their ceiling. They could have won, but I think they about hit their ceiling. And to me, I was wondering, even as incredible as that Abby Dayton play was, I think for me, it was even if they won, they were going to have to turn right back around and beat them again. And are you throwing Sam Landry again? And then if you throw her again, how much are you throwing her against Texas, even if you win that second game against Tech, which was not a guarantee? Yeah. I don't know about you, but I think for this season with this team, not only is losing in the semis nothing to scoff at, that feels about right. I don't know. How'd you
Yes.
feel?
Yeah. No, look, coming into, I think because of covering the other conference, covering the Big 12, I think coming into that game with the way that Tech had been playing, um, I had them in the national championship against Oklahoma for a reason. Like, I mean, just watching them play against Florida State, the way that they looked, I think you saw this team really for the first time when they got to Oklahoma City. I mean, they had played there before, but if you've ever been to Devon Park or Hall of Fame Stadium, um, when they bring the bleachers in and fill in the outfield for the Women's College World Series, it's just different. Like it's a completely different environment. And so I think for the first time with this group, you really kind of saw their youth show up in Oklahoma City this second time around. And I think when you look at it, it's hard to look at it in a microscope because at the end of the day, this team was 52-9 and was incredibly young. Like I mean, really, yes, you lose Sid Sanders at first base, um, but as far as like experience coming back, like I don't know. Outside of some things in the circle, obviously you got to replace Landry, but like there are so many pieces to this team that come back and are only going to be improved and be better next year. And it felt like right there about the Arkansas game, right in the SEC tournament, and then um, through super regionals is where you really saw this team kind of scratch the surface of what they can be. And I think you kind of nailed it. This is the one of the top three teams in the country, incredibly young, and one heck of a coaching job by Patty Gasso this year because my goodness, this team just looks. They still found a way to be OU softball, even in their last moment of the season, found a way to somehow, some way, make this thing a game again. And it's the DNA of this program.
Well, to me, I think that last 10 minutes of that Tech game, I think encapsulated both how impressive this team is or this team was, and then also just the reasons why it made sense that they didn't win popped up.
Right.
Because for when you get that Abby Dayton play, you really, I mean, win or lose, it's one of the most iconic plays in OU softball history.
Yep.
When you combine that with Ella Parker's walk-off against Tennessee, those are two of the 10 to 15 most iconic plays ever in program history, and they happened in the span of a few days, and it happened with this team. I think that's one. Two, it's a testament to Texas Tech that they responded so quickly, which I think also was, the pitching staff was a question mark going into the postseason. It's kind of remarkable they made it this far despite that question mark, because what happened, they put so much on Sam Landry, and you could tell she was running out of gas.
Yeah.
Which I think is why it was certainly not a given they were going to win that second game. It's clear that they did not trust anybody else outside of Landry on that pitching staff. It's why nobody else played except for Kirsten Deal, and it's why Kirsten Deal saw 2 2/3 innings against Oregon. I mean, that was a message loud and clear that they were going to win with Landry or lose with Landry. Yep. So, like, it made sense that there's a team with talent and also that OU softball pedigree. It's why Abby Dayton hits that bomb, right? But they lose because, one, Landry's running out of gas, and you have to give credit to Tech. And then two, I think one thing that is going to get lost in the shuffle, and this isn't to single her out specifically, but if you're OU, you get that bomb from Dayton, and it's Cassidy Pickering coming up to the plate, and she strikes out.
Yep.
Which the World Series was a tough stretch for Pickering, and this isn't about her specifically. I think it's more about what were the couple of things, right? It's youth, it's pitching staff, depth, and also just the offense. And obviously, Pickering is an incredible offensive player, but
Sure.
when you run up against a pitcher like Nigel Kennedy,
Yeah.
it's
And
all
Tegan
it
Kavan
and right,
and yeah, like yeah.
yeah, and Pickens, and I mean, you were offense was going to be hard to come by, and as much talent as there is on this roster, that was it was a question mark. You're relying on so much youth, and Pickering is obviously a great player who was big last year, but she's still just a sophomore.
Right.
So like to me, it kind of they hit their ceiling. That's kind of what it
Yeah.
feels like to me.
Absolutely.
I think I think the other part to not that I don't want to get lost in the shuffle is just the pure insanity that you could graduate a class like that, like OU did last year, and lean on and rely on so many young players. And who goes 3 for 3 off of Nija in the final game of the season? It's Sydney Barker, a true freshman who wasn't even a starter most of the year
Wild.
and struggled against Oregon the game before. And they were asking a lot of young players to step up and play big roles, and they did. And it's kind of like for almost any other program, this year is a hard fought. They made it to supers.
Mm-hmm.
Good year. Well, let's come back and build on it for next year. No, and this year's team they got within a stone's throw. They got 4 wins away from another championship, and it's just insane. And I don't even want to treat it like the little engine that could, because there's a lot of talent on this team. But there's a lot of ways where this team could have, they went 40-20. Good season, right? Mm-hmm. This was an incredible season. It was an incredible season.
Well, and like you combine that with the fact you look at who's left. I mean, obviously Kennedy is in a world of her own. I think you put her. I know Pickens is up there too, but like I would say, I mean, I feel pretty confident at this point in saying Kennedy is the best arm in college softball, bar none. Like it's really not even a debate.
No,
what she's able to do, and so like you have her, but also Tegan Kavan for Texas hasn't given up a run in the World Series. Like she's
been awesome.
She has not given up a single run, and her performance against Oklahoma the other day, with everything that was going on, like hat tip. Incredible. That just really, really good. But you think about it from that perspective, Sam Landry, what Sam Landry put together for Oklahoma, she was one of the better arms in the country. But you're in rare company amongst those other pitchers, the teams that were left, and you're really a truly elite arm away from being in that series. And I think the fact that Oklahoma had to lean so heavily on Landry, you're probably getting 85 to 90% out of her of what she's capable of instead of the full 100 because you're having to lean so heavily. So, yeah, what this team did, the makeup of the team, I don't think you could have squeezed any more out of this team than you did. And it was pretty darn close to being good enough for another title.
They won the SEC.
Yeah.
And they might have won the tournament too. We'll just never know because that game got canceled. But they won the SEC in this rebuild year. And then it makes sense to me that their 2 losses at the World Series were to a team that probably is a little more talented than they are.
Mm-hmm.
The question was, like, that's when OU swept Texas a few weeks ago. I think that almost had more to do with Texas. And obviously OU was phenomenal, but that's I don't even like to analyze the game this way, but there was a part of me that's like, does Texas just have a mental block when it comes to Oklahoma?
Yeah.
So, but when Texas beat them, that was just Texas was just better. Texas was just better that day. Not a lot better, not even like a decent, just a little better.
Yep.
Just a little better. And if Kavan's going to pitch, Kavan was awful in Norman a few weeks ago. It's why OU won that series.
Yeah, she had a 22 ERA coming into this most previous game against Oklahoma.
She was unplayable.
Yeah.
She gave up 12 runs in 4.1 innings.
Yep.
I mean, she's unplayable. And then she was great. And if Kavan's going to pitch like that, it's just Texas is just a little bit better. So it makes sense that their losses were to a Texas team that's a little better, and then against the best pitcher in softball.
Yep.
There's no shame in that. I think it also adds credence to the idea that as good as those OU teams were in 23 and 24, they maybe don't win in 23 without Ball, and they maybe don't win in 24 without Maxwell.
Agreed.
You know,
It
so
takes an arm like that in this anymore. It just does.
yeah, and I think we are learning. Again, I'm not breaking any new ground, but I think to win a title, like you have to have one of those arms or just an incredible amount of depth.
Yes.
And Sam Landry was really good all year, but I think we saw she's a really good pitcher, just a little short of that elite group. And then OU didn't trust any of the depth around her, and that's how you get to this outcome. And there is no shame in that. They made it to the semifinals.
Yeah.
It's okay if they were a little short. Having said that, this offseason is really interesting, especially compared to last year, because I think you see where OU could add a piece or two. You can see where there might be a hole or two that OU needs to patch up. Here's the thing, though, Brian. When you compare this season to this offseason to last season was turning over the roster. You're not only losing a ton of players, you're graduating 10, and they lost several more to the portal, including like high caliber
Yes.
players that they lost to the portal that ended up playing big roles elsewhere. You graduate. I mean, so you lost a ton of players and you lost a ton of high caliber players. That's not the case this year.
Mm-mm.
They're presumably bringing almost everybody back, and they're bringing back a lot of starters on top of that. So I think that makes it to where it's interesting to analyze. Oh, and then on top of that, they're bringing in the number one class in the country.
I was about to say, don't forget. Yeah.
So I think that's what makes for one, they're not going to have a ton of roster spots to play with. And two, this is the most important part, Brian. And I mentioned this over at OUinsider.com in the offseason softball thread. I've been told that both this is obvious, but also just from a priority standpoint, OU is focused on roster retention. They need to retain all these players. That was not the key focus a year ago. OU returned 8 players from last year, and a small handful of them played meaningful roles this year.
Yep.
So OU needed to rebuild the roster on top of everything else. They're not rebuilding the roster. They just need to retain these players. And I've been told they have invested a significant amount of NIL money to make sure these players are retained.
Yep.
I don't know. When you look at, before we dive into needs or just where this roster fits in as a whole, we need to talk about a couple of these departures too. Where do you see this roster and just, I guess, the difference from last offseason to this offseason?
Well, you kind of mentioned it, the bats, the people that the girls that needed to, or that they needed to retain. There really just hasn't been a whole lot of drama. Like, you haven't heard a whole lot of drama about them leaving, and they're not leaving for graduation's sake. I mean, whether you start with Gabby Garcia, or like, there's so many places to start with the team, with the players that are coming back, that's important. But those are pivotal young pieces that they're going to be able to build upon, both offensively and in the field. And what you do lose, I know we've seen Corey Hicks hit the portal. Maya Bland's gone. We just saw Hannah Core and Katie McKay. So you're losing a few pieces. Maya Bland she had plenty of experience. You saw her utilized in some places as a base runner, and she had some bright moments. I think her biggest being that shot in Bedlam this year, I think, was probably her biggest moment at the plate. But you know, relatively speaking, I don't think you lose a whole lot of offensive production, which is just huge. And yes, you do lose Sam Landry, but you have to be excited about the youngsters coming in. I think the fact that they were able to retain somebody like Sophia Bordy, like, it's just big. It's a huge deal that they're gonna have the pieces that they do. So when you look at the players that were really great down the stretch, Abigail Dayton, Abby Dayton, um, Agbiani, were both of those are like, I guess they're going into their senior years, and so
Hmm.
like you have some experience there with those two. But I'm really excited to see Pickering and Parker take their leap to being upperclassmen, to being juniors. Like I think those are not just pivotal pieces, but like very, very high potential all Americans. Like, I mean, they're already at that status, and I think you could really see them cement themselves as some of the better players that this uh, program has had over the last several years. Though they have that kind of talent, and then the young players behind them are just. It's really exciting. I guess I could just sit here and talk about it all day, but it's really exciting.
Well, just let's just put it this way: their graduates are Sam Landry, Sid Sanders, and Isabella Smith. Those are their graduates. Isabella Smith basically didn't play in the postseason. Losing Sam Landry hurts.
It does.
Losing Sid Sanders hurts, but is not. She's more. It more hurts to lose her at first base than it does
Correct.
offensively.
And she is an elite first baseman.
She
Like,
is.
don't gloss over. I can't gloss over that.
No, she is. And then as we're recording this, hell, this will probably be a little bit different by the time I would expect at least a couple more portal entries. This will probably be released on Friday morning. Corey Hicks, Maya Bland, Katie Lee McKay, and Hannah Core. Of that group, losing Corey Hicks hurts a little
Yeah.
because I think she could have pushed for a bigger role next season.
Yeah.
Losing Hannah Core hurts a little from a defensive perspective. But when you look at everything else they're retaining, they're basically retaining every starter except
Yeah.
for Sid Sanders.
Yeah.
So that's a huge difference compared to last offseason, for one. Two, I think I can tell you this program is really, really excited about this incoming freshman class. I can tell you that
Should be.
I can tell you with the utmost confidence, which I think could impact their portal strategy. I'm not saying they won't add anybody because of it, but I'm telling you right now, Kendall Wells,
Oh,
catcher, could push for. She could start next year,
yep.
regardless of if Corey Hicks
I will.
transferred.
I'll say it before. I'll say it right now. Like that. I think that's your starting catcher day one.
She might be, especially if Corey Hicks is really gone.
Mhm.
I just don't think Isabella Emmerling has done enough to lock up that spot.
Right.
We saw all kinds of struggles from her, both offensively and defensively.
Yep.
I think when you look at potential portal needs, like it's kind of pitcher and catcher, but not really anything else. You can't. Again, we're talking about this is not a teardown. You're bringing back almost all of your production from a team that made the semifinals.
Yep.
You don't need, and I know there's going to be like Cassidy Pickering struggled in the outfield at times. I get it. A couple of those moments were really bad in Oklahoma City. She's going to be back in the outfield. I don't know I don't know what to tell anybody. She's going to be back in the outfield. Her offense is too crucial. They already have Ella Parker as a DP. Pickering is a better option than Ella in the outfield. She just is. And again, you don't need to make full scale changes. She just needs to be a little bit better in the outfield. Again, so anyways, I'm getting on a tangent. I mean, Kendall Wells might be their starting catcher. Alyssa Parker and Berkeley Zaki are probably in the rotation next year
Yep.
in the circle. I think that's gonna have an impact on how they approach the portal. There's a couple. Tell me what you think, but there's a couple interesting questions here. For one, OU right now has 6 arms on the team. If you add anybody in the portal, unless any of these other pitchers process out,
Yep.
that's giving you 7 arms at minimum if you add anybody. And to me, there were 2 names in that circle or on the staff right now that I'm looking at. It's Peyton Monticelli, who has already indicated she's coming back.
Yeah.
And 2 is Sophia Bordy, just because she didn't finish the year with the team, and I honestly don't have any other intel on exactly what's going on with her. But if OU retains all these players, I think this coaching staff is going to have to ask if it's worth it to go add another pitcher, to go spend a ton of money on
Right.
a pitcher.
Yep. Yep.
And I think too, you can go add a catcher, but this team is going to be even younger next year than it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, if you think Kendall Wells can be your catcher, or if you think Parker or Zaki can be in the circle, it's just, and you're already spending a lot of money on roster retention. I just don't know what the appetite is going to be to go spend a ton of money to go bring in a marquee player.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I'm approaching this offseason.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of the way I'm looking at it too. Is if they're as excited as they seem, and I mean, you and I both know that they are about the class that's coming in. Um, why mess with that? Like what? And I think that's going to be difficult for some people to hear because the fallout of the dynasty's over. Like I okay, I have to address it. The streak is over. Yes, the streak is over. The dynasty is not over.
Another one might be starting.
Correct. Like we. The problem is Jesse. The problem is okay. Cassidy Pickering made some mistakes in Oklahoma City, but she's being compared to Jada Coleman as an outfielder. Like I know she played center field and left field is different, but everybody got used to seeing Jada Coleman steal. That's not normal. So like there are. Go ahead.
We may never see an outfielder as good as Jada Coleman ever again.
Correct. So like you have to look at it and what's backfilling like the players that they're backfilling with like Tia Malloy was not able to really like break into this rotation this year as heavily as she could. That's a game-changing piece that's going to be in the rotation next year. And you're adding top players at their positions going forward. Like honestly, Jesse, like I'll say this, tell me if I'm crazy. If Oklahoma didn't add a single player in the transfer portal, I think that their ceiling next year is just as high as it was this year.
I would agree.
Because I think you have more arms as a group that you could throw out there. Um, and I think you have a likelihood of one or two of them being at Sam Landry's maybe potential at their best, um, with maybe an even more potent offense. So to me, it just if there's a fit out there that works that makes sense, yes. But I don't think it is nearly. Last year, you didn't have a choice.
You had to from a getting enough players on the roster standpoint.
Correct.
Had to go add players.
Yeah, there and with the last lack of experience, like it just wasn't there. You look at this team youth wise, yes, there are going to be a lot of sophomores on this team. There are going to be freshmen that are pushing in, but like these are players, most of them that had a lot of experience this last year. And like that is going to getting a year's worth of experience at Oklahoma is invaluable. Like you just it's the way that this program has worked over the last 2 decades under Patty Gasso, like experience really isn't going to be an issue this year. And so I think you look at that, you look at it from that lens. It's to me at least, it would be reasonable to not even attack the portal if you felt there wasn't a perfect fit.
And I think no, I would agree, and that's why. Like, look, I think even especially in the circle, you're going to hear a lot about Jazzy over at Florida State, who's a good pitcher. You're going to hear a lot about Caitlin Terry over at UCLA. She's a good pitcher. Here's the thing, though. OU obviously went hard at like Nyjah Kennedy last offseason because Nyjah Kennedy is Nyjah Kennedy. And everything we just said about OU needing an elite arm, there's not a Nyjah Kennedy level talent because
No.
Nyjah Kennedy's Nyjah Kennedy, but there's not a Nyjah level talent in the portal. That's one. And two, I also still don't think it's as simple as just go get an elite pitcher.
Right.
Because that's not really what sank OU. That's not just it was also the lack of depth. They need to develop a lot of these arms. I think you can feel confident in the pitchers that OU is bringing in and the young pitchers that are on this roster. I think that's one. Two, even at catcher, like it hurts to lose Corey Hicks. I actually think it's maybe a little more likely they add a catcher than a pitcher. Having said that, I mean, again, Kendall Wells might be your starting pitcher or your starting catcher next year.
Yeah.
The only other spot on the roster is kind of first base because Sidney Sanders is leaving, but I think you can put. I mean, there'll be a competition there, but Sidney Barker can play first.
Yep.
You've got other players on the roster that can play first, and now that Hannah Core is gone, obviously, if you move Barker to first, you'd need to move someone else to outfield. That's not a. OU doesn't need to go add somebody to shore that up.
Yeah.
So all that is to say, like. I think OU will make a move or two. I think we will see. I mean, we may even know the names of the players that hit the portal by the time this publishes. I would expect a couple more. I was kind of told that it would be names of it, just players that since OU is retaining so many players, there's just not very much playing time up for grabs. There's not a whole lot of starting spot up for grabs. So a lot of the players you're going to see leaving are players that can go play more elsewhere.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a shocking name. I wouldn't completely rule it out, but I'm not expecting it. So at that point, I think it's once OU has a clear idea over the next few days how many players are gone, what their numbers look like. I bet they'll add a name or two, but I don't think they're going to break the bank to bring in those players, and I don't think anybody should expect a Nyjah level, talent for OU to add in the portal. I just don't think it's there.
Yeah.
I just don't.
You know, there's been a little bit of noise about Sydney Berzon. That's something I think that's like probably your top arm out there right now. Would be a big addition, but I think again, Kennedy almost last year. Adding Kennedy is good enough to get you to a national championship. Like that is what it is. But it's a little skewed if you're at Oklahoma because you lost Jordy Ball in the same breath as you lost her just the year before, and then somebody like Kennedy comes open. So I don't think there's somebody to the level of either one of those two players out there right now. You're really comparing great players to. I mean, Kennedy's probably going to be the starting pitcher for. I would be surprised if she wasn't in the rotation for the Olympics in 28. So like, it's just different. It's just different.
I think the best way to summarize it is, look, OU is bringing 5 new players in, and that's not including Bordy. Obviously, that's 6. They're losing 3. They've lost 4 to the portal. I'd expect them to lose probably 1 to 2 more. That'd be my expectation. At that point, you're playing with like a couple of roster spots.
Yep.
And with that in mind, I think you look at it in a couple different ways. One, there's not as much money for free agents as there was last year. And 2, just because of roster retention. And 2, this is a really close roster. Last year, you didn't know what the roster was fully capable of. Now you know we're bringing in a ton of players, or bringing back a ton of players who nearly won another championship.
Right.
So I think those things are going to influence how OU attacks the portal. If I'm making a claim in the sand, I would say OU will probably end up adding a pitcher and a catcher.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're going to be the biggest names, and I don't think they're going to be absolute game changers. And I think even if OU ends up adding someone, adding a pitcher, adding a catcher, it's possible that the players that play the most at those positions are already on the roster.
Correct. Yep.
I think that's maybe the best way to put it.
Yeah.
But of course, we publish this now and watch tomorrow morning. Ella Parker and Cassidy Pickering are in the portal.
Stop.
Any last words?
I'm just
this offseason.
I think this team, all of the unknowns coming into the year made 25 like so exciting because for the 4 years prior, you knew that this team was just going to be special, and there was a lot of I don't want to call it anxiety, but just unknowns going into the off season and 26 coming up. I feel like the upswing is back. Like this team, the ceiling is rising again, and that's exciting because it's a lot of new names, it's a lot of new uh, superstars, and it's going to be really fun to watch this team ascend.
I think for a fan, it's like we're getting most of the team back on a group that nearly made the champ series again.
They won
And
52 games.
yeah. And now they won the SEC, and now I think you can head in the offseason at both being very excited about this new class coming in. They are really, 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 really good.
Mhm.
And you can go into the portal with the mindset of, man, if OU could just add this player as like as another piece and go into next year fully able to go win it all.
Yep.
It's crazy. If you're an OU softball fan, you're incredibly spoiled.
Yep.
We're incredibly spoiled to cover them, and fans are incredibly spoiled to watch this team. Brian, I think we'll be back next week to probably talk more about the portal and or about softball portal, any other moves, and also talk about OU football. So appreciate you guys tuning in as always. Make sure to like and subscribe here at this OU Insider YouTube channel. That'll do for us here on this Oklahoma drill. Brian, appreciate you as always. Appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll see you guys next time on the Oklahoma drill. And Thunder up.
Thunder up.